يوم الثلاثاء ويوم الأربعاء.
The leader of the powerful Hezbollah militant group in Lebanon on Thursday blamed Israel for a stunning wave of deadly attacks that detonated thousands of electronic devices across the country. In a speech broadcast from an undisclosed location, Hassan Nasrallah called the attack, quote, unprecedented in the militant group's history.
Thousands of pagers were targeted by the Israeli enemy, and they were all detonated at the same time. The enemy violated through this attack all the regulations, laws, and red lines.
Lebanon and Hezbollah have blamed Israel for attacks on Hezbollah's communications equipment that killed at least 37 people and wounded around 3,000. Nasrallah acknowledged the attacks represented what he called a major security and military blow. Dozens of funerals show the reach of the strike. On Tuesday, pagers used by Hezbollah began exploding, seemingly detonated remotely. A day later, handheld radios began to explode, sometimes at funerals of those killed in the first wave. On Thursday, the Lebanese army conducted what it said was the controlled demolition of a battery from inside a communications device. Israel has not commented directly on the attacks, which security sources say were probably carried out by its Mossad spy agency. But as Nasrallah spoke, the roar of Israeli jets could be heard over Beirut. Sonic booms as the aircraft broke the sound barrier thundered over the city. Israel said its warplanes struck southern Lebanon overnight. Hezbollah reported that airstrikes resumed in the border area in the afternoon. The cross-border strikes between the combatants have escalated since October 7th, when Hezbollah fired on Israel in support of Hamas's attack on Israeli communities from Gaza. Israel says its conflict with Hezbollah, like its war in Gaza against Hamas, is part of a wider regional confrontation with Iran, which sponsors both groups, as well as armed movements in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. The conflict has repeatedly threatened to spread. Iran has promised to hit back at Israel for what it says was an Israeli strike that killed a Hamas leader in Tehran. Iranian state media reported the commander of the country's Revolutionary Guards told Hezbollah's Nasrallah that Israel will face a, quote, crushing response from the Axis of Resistance for its attack on the group's communications devices.
Widespread attacks on Hezbollah communication devices in Lebanon this week have turned the spotlight on Israel's secretive Unit 8200. On Tuesday, Hezbollah pagers detonated across the country simultaneously when a coded message was sent to them. The next day, handheld radios used by the armed group exploded in Beirut's suburbs and the Bekaa Valley. The combined attacks killed at least 37 people and wounded over 3,000 more. Although Israel has so far remained silent on the surprising attacks, security sources told Reuters they were likely carried out by its Mossad spy agency. However, one Western security source said that a secretive cyber intelligence unit that is not part of the Mossad was also involved in planning the operation, which the source said was over a year in the making. Unit 8200 is the largest single military unit in the Israel Defense Forces. It functions in a similar way to the U.S. National Security Agency, and, according to sources, was involved in the development stage of the Hezbollah devices, specifically the technical side of testing how explosive material could be inserted in them when they were manufactured. Although the IDF rarely comments on 8200's activities, in 2018 it said the unit's operations ran from intelligence gathering and cyber defense to, quote, technological attacks and strikes. Reuters on Wednesday interviewed Kobi Samborsky, a former member of the unit. Samborsky said he had no knowledge that Unit 8200 was involved in the attacks in Lebanon, but said the sophisticated operation seemed like the sort of projects that drive its members.
So of course I don't know anything about it, and even if I knew, I could not say anything. But to me, that's a great example of a can-do attitude. You know, if you think of, if someone would have told you yesterday or a day before this event that something like this could have happened, you would say, yeah, I don't think it's possible. It looks like something from a science fiction movie. I think those are exactly the kind of challenges that make such young people excited, and I think a great example of how smart minds could work to achieve a challenge that looks again crazy when you just think of it for the first time.
Samborsky also says a hallmark of the unit is its high turnover of young, hand-picked recruits replacing veterans.
People get to the unit mostly at the age of 18, which is of course very young. They have zero experience. Innovation is almost an integral part of the culture, and it's very exciting, specifically in our day and time where things are moving so dramatically. So whatever the organization learned to do, after a few years, you want to rotate it and you want to learn new stuff. So with this flow of new and very talented, very young and talented people, you get this almost automatically.
Some graduates of Unit 8200 have gone on to build Israel's private tech sector and some of its biggest companies. Samborsky himself is now a managing partner at an early-stage fund investing in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Unit 8200 also handles signals intelligence and effectively functions as Israel's early warning system. As such, it shouldered some of the blame for failing to detect Hamas's October 7th assault on southern Israel. Last week, the unit's commander said he was stepping down. In his resignation letter, carried by Israeli media, he said he hadn't fulfilled his mission.
Japanese radio equipment maker ICOM said Thursday that it was looking into reports that two-way radio devices bearing its logo have exploded in Lebanon. Handheld radios used by armed group Hezbollah detonated on Wednesday across Lebanon's south, just one day after similar explosions of the group's pages. Lebanon's health ministry said 20 people were killed and 450 injured on Wednesday in Beirut's suburbs and the Bekaa Valley. The death toll from Tuesday's explosions rose to 12, with nearly 3,000 injured. Reuters was able to obtain a model of the handheld radio, said to have been used in Wednesday's attack, known as the ICV-8-2. In this video of Reuters' disassembly of the device, ICOM branding and Made in Japan labels are clearly visible. ICOM said it was not possible to confirm whether the radio product, reportedly related to the explosions, was shipped by the company. Sales of the device were reportedly discontinued about 10 years ago. ICOM said the batteries required to operate the device had also been discontinued. The company added that its products exported overseas undergo strict regulatory processes set by the Japanese government. ICOM has previously warned about counterfeit versions of its devices circulating in the market, especially discontinued models.
The sonic booms of Israeli warplanes rang out over Beirut on Thursday, as the jets carried out Israel's most intense strikes on southern Lebanon in nearly a year late on Thursday. The strikes escalated tension between Israel and Hezbollah, while the US and UK call for restraint. Britain has called for an immediate ceasefire, and White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre told a briefing diplomacy was still achievable.
We are concerned about the tension and afraid and concerned about potential escalation. We have said that in the Middle East. We've been very clear. And we've also said that the way to move forward is diplomatic resolution.
This video, released by the Israeli army, was said to show the bombardment, which the army said included more than 52 strikes and targeted multiple rocket launcher barrels in southern Lebanon. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Israel's military vowed to continue to attack Hezbollah and said its Thursday strikes hit about 100 rocket launchers, plus other targets in southern Lebanon. It claimed the rockets were set to be fired immediately towards Israel. The intense barrage followed attacks that saw radios and pagers carried by Hezbollah blow across Lebanon, killing nearly 40 people and wounding thousands. Lebanon and Hezbollah pin the blame on Israel. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said in a Thursday TV address the device explosions on Tuesday and Wednesday crossed all red lines. Israel has not directly commented on the pager and radio detonations, which security sources say were probably carried out by its Mossad spy agency. Mossad has a long history of carrying out sophisticated attacks on foreign soil. Hezbollah has expressed a desire for further military engagement, while the situation remains fraught with fear and uncertainty for civilians in the region.
Mazen Abu Jaish is among the roughly 200,000 Palestinian residents of the occupied West Bank who had crossed daily into Israel to work. But that was before October 7, 2023. In the wake of the Hamas attack on Israeli communities and the subsequent war in Gaza, Abu Jaish and hundreds of thousands like him lost their work permits. And faced with unemployment and no end in sight to the brutal war in Gaza, Abu Jaish has turned to these greenhouses to replace his lost income. In his village of Beit Jajan, with some fertile land and modest means available, Abu Jaish and a group of workers sought support from local authorities to launch an agricultural project in the area.
This will become more common. In the end, everyone is looking for a source of income and everyone is going to farm. This will create better economic conditions, but we need marketing, and the concerned parties are working on exporting and marketing it. This year, the produce has doubled compared to previous years.
The income is modest, but better than nothing, and it's benefited the area. Nasser Abu Jaish is the head of the Beit Jajan Village Council.
People started believing in farming again, in working the land. People now are not only thinking of greenhouses, but also planting citrus trees. And to farm regularly with what is called uncovered farming in order to earn an income.
A report from the International Labour Organization this week projected unemployment in the West Bank and Gaza rising above 50%, with a total of 500,000 jobs lost. The loss of wages has compounded the economic impact of the war in Gaza and unrest in the West Bank. There is some talk of letting Palestinian workers return. Some Israeli security officials worry that the loss of earnings in the West Bank could fuel even greater strife.
We'll secure our elections. Our goal will be one-day voting with paper ballots, proof of citizenship, and a thing called voter ID.
Donald Trump's baseless claims of widespread voting by non-citizens have made their way into a series of lawsuits challenging voter registration procedures in some states. The Republican presidential candidate and his allies have filed at least 8 of these lawsuits in 4 of the 7 swing states that are expected to decide the November 5th election. But legal experts say the court filings offer little evidence of voting by non-citizens, which independent studies have shown to be too rare to affect election results.
You're letting people pour into the country so they can go and vote.
A study of Trump's false claims of widespread non-citizen voting in the 2016 presidential election showed only 30 incidents among 23.5 million ballots cast, according to the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University. With less than 50 days before the 2024 election, democracy advocates say Trump's legal strategy in pursuing these lawsuits is to sow distrust and lay the groundwork for contesting individual state results if he loses.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
Trump tried unsuccessfully to overturn his 2020 loss to Joe Biden in a campaign that included more than 60 lawsuits and inspired his supporters' January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Nearly all of the 2020 lawsuits filed by Trump and his allies were dismissed for lack of evidence and other issues.
Samsung is suing members of a union leading a strike at one of its plants in India. Court papers seen by Reuters show it seeking an injunction to restrain the union and its members from agitation in and around one factory. Hundreds of workers at the facility in Chennai have been disrupting work since September 9th. They're demanding higher wages and the recognition of unions. That's a big headache for Samsung, with the plant accounting for 1/3 of its $12 billion annual revenue in India. It is the company's only plant in the country that makes home appliances. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also watching, as the unrest could undermine his bid to court foreign investors. At a hearing Thursday, a lawyer for Samsung said union members were preventing willing workers from doing their jobs. A lawyer for the union said management was ignoring workers' demands. The unrest is among the largest strikes of its kind in India in recent years. Samsung's Chennai factory employs some 1,800 people, with over 1,000 taking part in the stoppage. A separate plant in northern India that makes smartphones isn't affected. The South Korean giant has said it plans to cut up to 30% of staff at some overseas divisions, including in India. It didn't respond to a request for comment on the report of court action.
Forcing residents to clamber onto rooftops to reach safety. A storm system brought devastating floods to the northern Italian region of Emilia-Romagna on Thursday for the second year in a row. The National Fire Department said it carried out more than 500 rescue operations in the area, including some using helicopters. The low-pressure system, named Boris, has wreaked deadly havoc across Central Europe, causing the worst flooding in more than 2 decades. As the system moved west over Italy, the acting president of Emilia-Romagna told public radio it had rained non-stop for 48 hours. Authorities in the town of Lugo ordered the evacuation of all ground floor residences after the local Senio River broke its banks. Over 1,000 people were evacuated overnight from their homes as 3 rivers overflowed. Schools were closed and rail services suspended in several provinces on Thursday. Floods and mudslides were also affecting the neighbouring regions of Tuscany and Marca. Emilia-Romagna was hit by 2 rounds of torrential rain and mudslides in May 2023, killing 17 people and causing $9.5 billion worth of damage, authorities said.
Japan on Thursday requested that China give a detailed explanation after a Japanese schoolboy died following a stabbing attack near his school in China. Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa confirmed in a statement that the 10-year-old died in the early hours of Thursday morning, a day after the attack in the city of Shenzhen. Chinese authorities said the boy was stabbed on his way to school at about 8 a.m. by a 44-year-old assailant surnamed Zhong. The schoolboy was a Japanese national like his father, while his mother is a Chinese citizen. Kamikawa, quote, strongly requested that China take all possible measures to ensure the safety of Japanese nationals. On Thursday afternoon, people laid wreaths at the gate of the Shenzhen school. The attack took place on the anniversary of an incident in 1931 that's triggered war between China and Japan. It's a sensitive date at a time when diplomatic relations are strained. It marks the second incident of that nature near a Japanese school in China in recent months. In June, a man attacked a bus used by a Japanese school. A Chinese national died trying to protect a Japanese mother and her child. China offers its condolences, branding the attack an isolated case.
Sean Diddy Combs will spend time at this prison in Brooklyn, New York, after losing his attempt to secure bail following an indictment for sex trafficking and racketeering by federal prosecutors. That's according to news reports. Conditions at the Metropolitan Detention Center in 2019 sparked a public outcry after an electrical fire cut power and heat to roughly 1,600 prisoners during one of the coldest weeks that year. The prison has a history of holding high-profile figures including Sam Bankman-Fried and Ghislaine Maxwell. Combs pleaded not guilty to the 3 criminal charges that were brought against him earlier this week. A U.S. magistrate judge denied bail for Combs, granting a prosecution request for continued detention before trial, following the music mogul's arrest on Monday.